Well, I want to ask you a question real quick, if you don't mind. I want to maybe change the subject, not really change it, but you had mentioned earlier about playing as a 7-year-old and playing as an 8-year-old, and I know you had some battles with some concussion issues when you were in college. I mean, that's not a secret of any sort. So I guess what I want to ask is, it seems like today there's a general push to try to. I mean, I've even heard that they're trying to do away with football for any kids under the age of 14. Okay. I think that's a mistake. What's your take on all that? I mean, what's your take on football for younger kids? And, I mean, I just want to get your opinion on all that.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's obviously a touchy subject for a lot of people. But to me, there's no other game like the game of football.
I agree.
And from a team aspect, and from a physicality aspect of it, there's the combinations of all the things that kids can learn through the game of football is unbelievable. And there's some great sports, obviously, where you can learn teamwork and work ethic and all that stuff. But to me, the three best things about football are, one, you're learning how to be a great teammate, because one day you're going to be a husband, and you're going to have kids, and you're going to have to be a great teammate. You're going to have to be a servant, and you're going to work for somebody that you may not always agree with, and you're going to play with people in football that you don't always like, and you got to learn to get along with. So it teaches you how to be a great teammate. That's huge. It teaches you how to be accountable, how to show up on time and be where you're supposed to be, and on any given play, on the kickoff team, being in your. So it teaches you how to be accountable, and those things. I just feel like football is the best teacher of so many life skills, and I think that it's a mistake to take it away from our kids. I also think that you don't see concussions. At least from my point of view, when I was going through football, I mean, we didn't see any concussions at all going through 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, all the way up through. There's so many less injuries in football at a younger age.
Right.
I can remember my dad saying, he coached for the Little Rebs for 14 years, and he had 2 or 3 really bad injuries.
Right. And
they were broken arms and broken legs of kids playing around before practice. It's one of the kids was running and stepped on the football and fell backwards and broke his arm. And so he had 3 bad injuries, and 2 of them were before practice.
Right.
And over a 14-year span. And so I just think with today, I honestly think you're more likely to get a concussion as a 7 or 8-year-old playing soccer.
Right.
Because my wife played soccer all the way up, played at Maryville College, and so we've talked a lot about this.
Sure.
And her brother played soccer all the way through college too, and he had 3 or 4 concussions because you use your head so much in soccer,
Right.
And with headers, and obviously when you get to that age, they're kicking it pretty dang hard,
Right.
And so you're heading it and everything, and you're hitting it against your head in practice. You do drills and stuff, and so I honestly. I'm not so sure that, that soccer or a game like that isn't any safer than football. Our game with the way the rules are being changed, it's getting safer every year. The peel back block, you can't, it's illegal now,
Right.
And so we're coaching our kids not to do that, whereas that was, that's what got everybody out of their seat a decade ago.
Right.
And now it's illegal, and I'm okay with that. Like I do think it was part of football, but now it's obviously not, and I'm okay with that, because at the end of the day, I still, football to me is about blocking and tackling.
Correct.
You do those 2 things better than the other team, you're gonna have a great chance of winning. It's not necessarily about the decleaters on a receiver who's not paying attention or not looking and stuff like that. So. I don't have any problem with the rule changes, and then of course our equipment's getting better and better.
Right.
And so there's no question that our game is under attack, and a lot of it has to do with the NFL CTE studies.
Right.
But I've done a whole lot of research on those myself, just because obviously it affects me as a coach, and then personally, dealing with some concussions in college, and I do think that a lot of those, I did find out that a lot of the research that group had done was extremely biased, and they're given like 90% of the players that they had chosen, had CTE, but also what they didn't tell you was a lot of those players were the ones that had, drug abuse problems and, had trouble with painkillers and, had so much other stuff going on in their life that could also cause CTE in the brain,
Sure.
And so,
Sure.
So anyway, it was not a really a fair study that I had seen, that I had done. And I'll never forget, I read this article and I shared it with a lot of our middle school parents. One time they asked me to speak at their banquet. I'd shared this article of a neurosurgeon in Boston. You may have seen this. It was a pretty popular article. Had come out and he had come to the conclusion that he was never going to let his 9-year-old kid play football.
Mm-hmm.
And so he kind of went in on his own. He had his own practice, and he kind of started studying it because his kid was a huge Patriots fan and he loved Gronkowski and wanted to play football. And long story short, he came to the conclusion that he can't afford to not let his kid play football. After, seeing what that study, kind of how unbiased or how biased it was and unfair it was. And then, doing the study himself and kind of coming to the conclusion that there's just not enough evidence that says football players are going to have CTE, or that, your kid's going to get a concussion. The percentages are so low, but it's the only thing you read online or the only thing you see in the news,
Right.
It's just the negative, the negative media, like everything we see nowadays. So anyway, I agree with you, Ralph. I think it's a mistake if we take that away from our kids, and football can teach us so much. And I mentioned, how teach us how to be a great teammate, teach us how to be accountable. But lastly, I think one of my favorite things is it teaches us how to handle adversity. And when you can teach your kids those three things, I think they're way ahead of the curve.